Star Wisdom, Principles of Pleiadian Spirituality by Jean Andrade. Chapter 2. Self-Responsibility. Your spiritual evolvement is totally your own personal responsibility. To assume that someone else, such as God or an ET or a guru, is going to do it for you is erroneous. In fact, it is only when you do accept personal responsibility for your spiritual growth that you can start growing spiritually. What we have on earth are cults. Some are very large, which we call world religions, and some are small, which we simply label as cults. But all of them are based on worshiping an individual whom we regard as divine, as one with God, the creator and ruler of all that is, or else as a messenger of God. And as the basic teaching of these individuals gets changed over the centuries and through translations of translations of translations, the resultant belief systems get further and further from the truth. The Pleiadians say that religions are not all bad, for they do contain much truth, some of them. Too often, however, that truth is sandwiched between lies, and thus the religion prevents real spiritual growth. The original founder of a religion might simply have been expounding the basic truths of life, but after his or her death, the religious and political leaders would often twist their teachings so as to create a mythology that would maintain the priestly and political hierarchy. Their aim was not to serve the truth with a capital T, but to serve their egos and keep people in a subservient, docile state, and to maintain themselves as the rulers and leaders of society. Cult leaders don't want their followers to think and act for themselves, to be independent, self-empowered, autonomous followers of their own inner light. They want people to be frightened sheep who can be controlled, manipulated, and exploited. What leads people to get caught up in cults? I believe that it is the unconscious desire of the individual follower to abdicate self-responsibility and to have someone else take responsibility for his or her life. We want a sense of security and are willing to do anything or believe in anything in order to have this sense of security that there is some powerful authority figure looking out for us. The Pleiadians believe in self-responsibility and in the benevolent force of life itself. Their God could be called cosmic creation consciousness. They seek to understand the laws of creation. They seek to understand the laws of cosmic creation consciousness by observing and studying nature. And it is by obeying the laws of cosmic creation consciousness that they have evolved into such a loving, harmonious, peaceful race. Their spirituality, or religion if you must, is the knowledge of life, the understanding of the nature of the universe, and the thorough comprehension of how and why reality functions as it does. They understand the process of birth, life, death, and rebirth, and it guides their whole society. Self-reliance. The Pleiadians told Billy Meier that any Earth humans who wanted to be contacted by them had to first reach the spiritual level where they could solve life problems completely by themselves without recourse to teachers or books. In other words, they had to have adopted a life attitude of total self-responsibility and self-reliance. The Pleiadians found that if they contacted humans who were not yet sufficiently evolved spiritually, then inevitably the Earth humans ended up worshipping the Pleiadians as gods. They don't want that to happen again. And so they have disseminated their message of truth and love through Billy Meier, who they say wouldn't fall into the trap of idolizing them. In the ancient past, they showed themselves to large numbers of people in order to help humanity develop certain forms of thinking. But people were so awed by the technical wizardry of the Pleiadians and other extraterrestrials that they began to believe in miracles. This led them astray spiritually, because it fostered abdication of personal responsibility and the worshipping of ETs as gods. Now is not the time for irrefutable visible proofs, or mass public landings on the political and religious properties of the world. Now is the time for the development of clear, rational, and logical thinking on the part of Earth humanity. Looking around us, we can observe that most people would rather have someone else solve their problems. In fact, the vast majority of people on this planet look not to their own self for guidance, but to a god figure, priests, gurus, spiritual teachers, psychics, tarot card readers, astrologers, boss, mummy, daddy, etc. And the result is that the blind lead the blind. Not only that, but everyone practices denial of what they are really doing, which is the abdication of self-responsibility and the giving away of each one's personal power to another. Why do we do that? I believe it is because we are afraid of life, and we desperately want to avoid feeling our insecurity. Instead of embracing our weakness and befriending those feelings, thereby learning from them and growing truly strong, we run from our feelings of insecurity and do anything we can to cover them over and create the illusion in our minds that everything is all right and we are secure and safe because we're protected just by believing and doing what other people say and tell us. So, we have a hidden agenda. When we are ostensibly seeking the truth through spiritual pursuits, we often are actually trying to flee from our own feelings of insecurity and low self-esteem and from unresolved emotional problems. This makes us easy prey for religious authorities to exploit us. This unconscious avoidance of one's inner reality and the desperate seeking of an answer to life's uncertainties makes one vulnerable to exploitation by cults, gurus, and religions. In fact, cults usually target such people. Keep in mind, the military is a cult. The person who is running from himself and/or his family is already primed for indoctrination by a cult because he has this hidden agenda which a guru or anyone who has studied himself and others can easily perceive. The guru, seeing the person's insecurity and the hidden desire to avoid dealing with it, easily captures the person by promising salvation, eternal security, divine protection, and unconditional acceptance. "Rely on me," says the guru, "and you will have no more worries and no more need to take responsibility for yourself." This is a most attractive message to one who is fleeing from his inner concerns. However, the truth of life is that one must develop oneself and grow and learn and evolve into one's own being. Sovereign divinity is what we all are, divine sovereignty. To assume that another will do that for you is self-deceptive, self-defeating, and a complete lie. Gurus and cults. So that there will be no misunderstanding, I want to make it clear that when I use the word guru, I am describing power-oriented spiritual leaders who use, abuse, and exploit their followers. I am not condemning the potentially beneficial relationship of a spiritual student with a highly evolved teacher who treats others with dignity, respect, and integrity. Such a relationship is a rare blessing that can greatly aid one's spiritual evolution. Historically, there are accounts of guru-disciple relationships in which one person helped another to grow spiritually without any sort of abuse or exploitation. Unfortunately, such cases seem quite rare nowadays. When our spiritual leaders fully embody these Pleiadian principles of spirituality, then they will be competent to teach spirituality. Until then, look very closely at any teacher or teachings you follow. It is imperative that you look to your inner teacher, to your own heart, your higher self, your soul for guidance and help in discerning what to do and how to grow spiritually. While it can be beneficial to learn from another who functions as a spiritual guide, it is important not to give away your personal power to your teacher. You can discern the bona fide spiritual teachers by whether or not they welcome and encourage you to leave them and to pursue your own personal path of evolution through other means. If you are not perfectly free to leave your teacher with their blessings whenever you want, you're in a cult. The book called Combating Cult Mind Control by Stephen Hassan is one of the best books on the subject of cults and their insidious methods of mind control. It tells you exactly the kind of questions to ask yourself in determining if a group is a destructive cult. In its detailed presentation of the sophisticated techniques that destructive cults use to gain control over unsuspecting people, it exposes exactly how a cult exploits its members, turning them into dependent automatons, zombies. Describing the characteristics of mind control, the criteria of a destructive cult, and the basics of cult psychology, Hassan goes on to explain how exit counseling helps free someone from the bondage of mind control. Systematically using modern psychological mind control techniques to break members down and undermine their self-esteem, cunning cult leaders gain control over their victims' thoughts, emotions, and behavior. Anyone, absolutely anyone, can become a victim of cult indoctrination. Forewarned is forearmed. However, judge not. One key point that Hassan makes is that people do not join cults. Rather, cults recruit and entrap people, usually at the most vulnerable times in their life, through deception and intimidation. And once in a cult, the member is indoctrinated so as to be phobic about ever leaving the group. Through step-by-step mind control techniques, people can even be made to believe that if they leave the group, they will die, or a nuclear war will start if they're disloyal to their guru and leave the cult. They become enslaved by the clever and unscrupulous cult leader and all of the other people involved. Cults are very successful in undermining one's ability to make personal decisions and in reducing one to the state of a dependent child. They disrupt the individual's identity and supplant it with one of their own making, one that is totally subservient to their leader's will and his or her support crew, and definitely not to follow their own logic or reason. Cults do not want people to think for themselves. To free someone from bondage to a cult, exit counselors help the person to connect again with their pre-cult identity, with their previous hopes and ambitions and persona, and knowing that the only reason people join cults is because of some trauma, or reason to escape their inner selves, that pre-cult identity then needs therapy. Exit counselors can begin their work before a person has formally left the cult, and they help the members grow and mature, naturally leading them to leave the cult. By getting a member to be honest, to really feel how unhappy and controlled they are in a cult, and to question the thoughts and feelings they had previously denied and suppressed, cult members begin to connect with their real self and to understand how they have been tricked into giving up their individuality and autonomy. The new perspectives given them by the counselor enables them to free themselves from the mind control spell they have been under. Only then, when they take personal responsibility for their life, can they have freedom and genuine spiritual growth. Another excellent book that describes the dynamics of cults is Arthur Diekman's The Wrong Way Home, Uncovering the Patterns of Cult Behavior in American Society. He explains how cults exploit their followers, rationalize the impropriety of the guru, suppress rational critical thinking, and appeal to the baser instincts, fear, greed, flattery, sex, etc., in order to capture new members. Cults attract people who are looking for parent substitutes, for wise and powerful guardians who promise them guidance, love, sex, and security. Cults enable people to act out their own dependency desires. Some of the issues that book deals with are dependency on a leader, compliance within the group, devaluing outsiders, and avoiding dissent. Anyone can be vulnerable to the allure of cults. This is so because we all want to be loved. We want to feel secure, and we want to live meaningful lives. And cults promise to deliver all of that if you will only surrender to the guru. The surrendering of one's personal power is not only detrimental to oneself, it is also harmful to the guru. Joel Kramer and Diana Alstad have eloquently described the dangers and follies of the guru-disciple relationship in their book, The Guru Papers, Masks of Authoritarian Power. They make an interesting point that the very nature of the guru-disciple relationship creates a social structure that is almost guaranteed to corrupt the guru. When we add the concept of reincarnation and soul evolution, we realize that the guru will always have to pay for their actions. Corrupt spiritual teachers. Spiritual leaders and religious teachers become corrupt so easily because of many factors. Their belief systems are often illogical and irrational and are not in alignment with the truth of cosmic creation consciousness. Their philosophies were created not to enlighten their followers, but to perpetuate a power structure. Cult leaders are exposed to unceasing adulation from large numbers of followers, potentially for decades, which feeds their egos and enables them to believe they are gods. The guru has to appear as an infallible knower of all that is, especially if he claims to be enlightened, and if he wants to keep up with the competition from other gurus who proclaim their infallibility and infinite wisdom and enlightenment. This leads to self-deception, since the leader, being human, has to have foibles and weaknesses and cannot live without making some mistakes. So, when the inevitable occurs and their all too human weaknesses and faults surface, the gurus deny them, and their people around them deny them and blame the victims. And inevitably, the guru enters more and more into the path of self-deception, subterfuge, and lies. Being without peers who could offer a form of corrective guidance, the guru spirals down into a pit of self-created folly and usually increasingly bizarre behavior. That is why so many modern gurus have ended up as suicidal megalomaniacs who lead their followers to their death. They feel trapped by the own thing they created, and the only way out is death to the shadow ego. These so-called spiritual teachers exhort their flocks to deny their own rationality, common sense, and self-reliance, and instead blindly submit to the guru. This they term surrender to the divine. If you resist, you are told that you are full of ego and that you are in your head. You are resisting the will of God. You are on the path to damnation, etc., etc., etc. All of the myriad mind control techniques and forms of manipulation used in the name of goodness and spirituality and divinity and God are really just the shoddy antics of con men trying to get you to abdicate your own personal power and common sense. If you remain in your power and see the reality of the situation, they can't deceive or exploit you. To counter that self-reliance, religions have exhorted their followers to be meek and submissive. They say that the meek will inherit the earth. And the reason they say that is because they want you to be meek, submissive, and docile in order to be easily controlled. Spiritual teachers often have hidden agendas, such as getting rich by financially exploiting you. It is best to regard them and their organizations as existing to serve you if you do participate. Keep in mind that they all believe the exact opposite. You serve them. They will phrase it in terms such as, serve these teachings of truth and help liberate others. Or, help this wonderful organization that is spreading the only true teachings of liberation, etc., etc., etc. Many spiritual teachings are a mixture of truth and falseness. If you can't discern what is the false part, you will probably end up getting hurt by it. And if you think they're teaching falseness, get out! Think for yourself and never, ever give your power away to anybody or any organization, no matter how holy they proclaim themselves to be. And if they are proclaiming holiness, turn and walk away. Always ask, is this really serving my spiritual evolution? If you ask that question, you will get the answer. And if it isn't, abandon that group. Don't abandon yourself. Humanity desperately needs genuine spiritual guidance, and that is why the Pleiadians have contacted us through Billy Meier and other channels. They are not our teachers or gurus, and they are not to be worshipped or made into authority figures. They have simply pointed out to us some of the basics of universal spirituality, and now it is our responsibility to apply these teachings to our daily lives. Each of us has to do the work of growing up and evolving into the being of light and love that is our true nature. We will return to our source eventually, but each individual will return with their own self-learned knowledge and hard-earned wisdom. Life is to be lived, and we each must accept complete accountability for our own life if we are to grow spiritually. That doesn't mean we can't learn from someone who temporarily functions as a teacher of spiritual truths, but it does mean that we must not make that teacher into an authority figure, because that blocks our own evolution. The overarching evolution we are all undergoing is towards a state of oneness, unity consciousness. That does not involve superiority and inferiority. It does not involve a guru-student relationship. Oneness means total equality of every being in existence. We also must see through the illusion that some people are enlightened and others are not. The belief that a human being can reach the end point of evolution and learning is completely false. People who claim to have achieved total self-knowledge and to have finished the spiritual evolution process are deluding themselves and others. We always are learning and growing. A teacher who proclaims himself to be enlightened is like a man drawing a line in the sand and then declaring he is on the right side of the line and is therefore enlightened. And then he tells you that because you are on the opposite side of this arbitrarily drawn line, you need to follow him. But he keeps moving the line. Pleiadians say that there's no such thing as spiritual hierarchy, especially with our concept of ascended masters. Some of those so-called masters, such as Saint Germain, were snake oil salesmen, charlatans, and con men. In any case, they possessed no special powers, and to ascribe magical powers to them only serves to disempower yourself. However, all false light prophets are truly powerful only in the way they know how to exploit the weaknesses of humanity. The Pleiadians describe us as a race held in bondage by our cult-like religions, and since their ancestors were responsible for creating the type of authoritarian and dogmatic religions now governing Earth, they are trying to rectify that mistake by introducing humankind to the true principles of spirituality, so we can evolve into a harmonious and happy society. A word of warning. The author strongly cautions the reader to be aware of joining any UFO groups, even and especially ones claiming Pleiadian connections. At this time in humans' evolution, it is almost inevitable that such groups are or will become cults. It is probably better to simply study the material on your own or together with your partner and perhaps a few close friends. Good luck, and keep your discernment highly sharpened.